Welcome in to First Things First. I'm Sarah Kustak, filling in for Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That's Nick Wright. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Good
How
to
was the
see
week
you, brother.
off?
Good to see you, off. Sarah,
it's
thank you
wonderful
for
to see
pitching in today.
Nick looks nice and tanned. You got a little color?
Very much. Chill. Chill.
He did get some I mean, he could use it.
Yes,
he could use it.
That is correct.
Both of us went to the Caribbean, and we have a lot of fans in the Caribbean, people watching the show.
I told you when I went to Trinidad that was true. You saw it in Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, but I thought they were just telling you stuff. I actually went there to do a survey, and the people are watching, so thank you very much. And thanks for joining.
I feel like I'm on vacation. When I'm here...
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
This is
Very
my
nice.
vacation.
That's a good little toss. That's a good. You're off to a blazing start.
That's what we want. We're going to start things off with the NBA as Kawhi Leonard has expressed his desire not to remain in San Antonio. According to reports, the Spurs will either keep Kawhi or deal him to a team in the Eastern Conference. This would go against Leonard's wishes, as he reportedly wants to play in Los Angeles. CC, should the Spurs actually ignore all trade offers from Western Conference teams?
I don't think they should ignore him, but I think from a tactical standpoint, I think Kawhi and his team maybe made a mistake by just saying that I want to be traded, but I only want to be traded to L.A., that being the Lakers and the Clippers. Like, if you want to be traded, you say where you want to be traded. And I think that was the important thing, saying where he was going to go, because to me, I've always had just a little bit of people telling me that they didn't think R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich, that they would trade Kawhi, not only trade him, but trade him to the Lakers. So I knew that would be a problem. So if Kawhi wants out, trying to have that type of restriction only makes it more difficult. And you reveal your total hand of what you want them to do, because you really want to be moved. Now, Kawhi still has leverage. If they trade him somewhere in the East, Kawhi tells the team, I'm not going to sign a contract extension.
Right. So he made it to where if people believe the only place that you're getting him for more than 1 year is Los Angeles, then he made it to where the best offers the Spurs will get would be from one of the two Los Angeles teams. Now that the draft is passed, most likely the Lakers. The Clippers, when they sold those draft picks that weren't yet human beings,
yes,
they were just intangible picks, then they could have made a package. But here's the thing, and I understand there's a real rivalry between the Spurs and the Lakers. I understand that these are the two, until Golden State came about for the last 4 years, these two teams dominated the conference for 20 years between the Spurs and the Lakers. You had 10 championships from between these teams from 99 up to right now. So I get it. But when you have an opportunity that the Spurs have, which is one of the best trade assets to come about in recent NBA history, you have to take the best offer, no matter who is offering it. Now, if the best offer comes from the East, that's a bonus, but I would not turn down any offer because of who's offering it if it's my best offer.
Yeah, and I think that I think you bring up a great point about the 20-year, the rivalry. But if you look since Pop and R.C. Buford have been there, how did the Lakers get their best players? Through trade.
Yes.
So why would I help a franchise that is on a downward trend? Why would I help them resurrect their basketball future in giving them my best player? Now, I do believe that them demanding to go to the Lakers, that they could always try to get a better deal from another team in the East, but Pop saying that he was only going to coach for 2 more seasons. I believe he's a very, very responsible person, and he is not going to be the person to leave San Antonio in worse basketball shape by letting Kawhi go to the Lakers when he resigns and then having to watch them battle with the Lakers for championships into the future.
Pop finally sat down with Kawhi this past week. If you are the Spurs, would you consider just keeping him? Are you in a rush to actually make a deal, or would you wait until as far as the trade deadline or next? What's your timeline?
If it's as broken as Kawhi's camp has made it seem that it is, as far as the relationship, that whether it started with a misdiagnosis and then some anger about what was leaked, what wasn't leaked, some of the things that teammates said, if it is so broken that you are all but certain he's leaving, then you have to trade him before the season starts, because you have to get a legitimate return. Like, I want people to understand, because he sat out a year. So I think people forget how good this guy is. The last time a top 5 player in his prime was available, you could argue was Kevin Garnett. You might argue it goes before that to Shaq when he went Lakers to Heat. This is similar to Barkley going to the Suns. This is much bigger than Kyrie Irving being available. A guy that's in that 8 to 15 range, comes available every couple, 3 years. Kawhi Leonard is 26 years old, a Defensive Player of the Year, and a Finals MVP. He's available. If you can get him, it means one thing, but also means if you're trading him, you have to get a king's ransom for it.
Yeah, and there's no system that he can't play in. People want to play up and down. Kawhi can play that. If you want to play half-court basketball, you can play that. He's self-motivated, and we know he's one of the best two-way players. So when you talk about how good Kawhi is, I mean, he can fit in any team, any organization. So for me, they have to be able to get a significant haul in trading him.
Then, despite knowing that his intentions are to play in Los Angeles, if you, though, are Philadelphia or you're Boston, do you think if we get him in our system, if we get him playing here, accustomed with the market, we could convince him to want to stay here?
I'll let you go ahead on this. I have a theory, but go ahead.
I think it's very, very difficult for Kawhi to get in his head. Now, I do believe that there's a part of Kawhi's team that would like him on the East Coast. They prefer New York. Like, he would prefer to be in Los Angeles or in New York. Now, I don't believe Boston, but when you can't go to Los Angeles and you're trying to get away from San Antonio, what are your options? They trade him to the Boston. I'm sure that Danny Ainge and the Boston, the brass, they can convince Kawhi that this is the best place for him. So I believe now it gets more intriguing. I don't believe they're going to trade him to the Lakers, and I just believe that Philadelphia and Boston are viable spots for Kawhi.
Listen, if I think I can win a title this coming year, I absolutely would trade for Kawhi, believing I'll be able to keep him. And if I can't, maybe we win the title. Because here's the thing. Kawhi and his folks, I understand it, believe he wants to be in Los Angeles or New York. And he wants to be in Los Angeles or New York. But people also need to understand he's from Southern California. He went to college in Southern California. And then he gets drafted by the Spurs. If he spends a year in Philly, maybe he realizes, oh, every city that's not LA isn't San Antonio. Is that the experience of, I can get the big city experience. I can get some of the exposure. I can get the lifestyle things LA offers, aside from the weather, in other places.
And also, when he was doing the rehab and spent an extensive amount of time on the East Coast, I could start to hear in Kawhi in this camp that, the East Coast is not so bad. And it is a viable option, but that was communicated to me that was New York City and playing for the Knicks.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, should any teams be concerned about his health? Do you think that's a factor?
Absolutely. I need to see him on the court. Yes, you can't take the things for granted that Nick is saying as far as his youth, being a two-way player, being one of the top 5 players, but I need to see him on the court. If he had been on the court, we wouldn't be talking about a trade. So, yes, I believe that's very important that I'm able to, because I can't trade all those assets without knowing if he's able to play in 2018-19 season.
And I just want to circle back to the idea of we don't want to trade him in the West for a moment. What the Spurs need to realize, and I think they do because they are run by such smart people, that is, with Popovich retiring in 2 years, with your best player absent of Kawhi being LaMarcus Aldridge, where your team basically played as well as it possibly could have this year without Kawhi, and they were drawing dead for a championship the entire time. If you trade him, it doesn't matter where he goes, because the rest of his prime, you're not a contender yet. If you trade him, you are trading him so you are a contender in 4 years minimum. Because you have to have a top 5 player in this league to be a contender. So if you get Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, for example, and one of those guys maybe one day is a top 5 player, that's 4 or 5 years down the road. So your windows and Kawhi's windows won't match up. If you trade Kawhi, you're no longer competing for championships in the short term. So it doesn't matter where he's competing for championships, because that's not your real competition.
Next week is going to be fascinating in the NBA, because coming up, could LeBron actually stay in Cleveland? That's ahead on First Things First.
At Buffalo Wild Wings, we'll admit that we often go overboard with our limited time offerings. We just can't help ourselves. Take our new signature sampler. For $15, you get wings and 3 shareable options, like fried pickles or cheese curds. Then there's our aptly named over-the-top nachos, a literal mountain of crispy tortilla chips loaded with your choice of pulled pork or honey barbecue chicken, corn, jalapenos, and more. Then top it all off with our new Platinum Margarita.
Go overboard with us today at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Available for a limited time while supplies last. Please drink responsibly.
On to the NFL. Buccaneers quarterback Jameis Winston is expected to be suspended several games by the NFL. It all stems from an incident in 2016 in which Winston allegedly sexually assaulted an Uber driver. Jameis denies this took place and has not been charged with any crime. CC, what was your reaction to this news?
Typically, stuff that happens, you might be just a little surprised about, but, Jameis and tracking Jameis and knowing Jameis, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I know a lot of players that played with Jameis at Florida State. I know Jameis. I've had several conversations with him. And to think when he came out of college, I had to ask myself this question yesterday when the news and everything came out. Did I ever think Jameis would go to the commissioner's office and visit with Roger Goodell before he left the NFL? And I said, yeah, of course he will. So as a franchise quarterback, he's not a positional player. The positional player, if he happens to see the commissioner, okay, I can understand that. But franchise quarterbacks, they don't typically end in the commissioner's office. And given Jameis's past, I think this will be a part of his legacy as a player. He is going to be a guy that you're going to question his judgment. And this is not the only incident. At Florida State, there were several incidents. Some stuff reported, some stuff not reported. My daughter was at Florida State when Jameis was there and was very close to a lot of the guys on the football team. She went to high school with a bunch of guys on the football team, so that was kind of her inner circle. And he always stayed involved in things, so I'm not surprised. I am disappointed that someone like Jameis, especially the things that he's already been exposed to, that he wouldn't be far more careful. And, I mean, these are serious allegations.
Listen, I just want to let people know the timeline of this. When Jameis was at Florida State, he was accused of rape. Okay, so I understand people, it was weird, his pre-draft process, because since he was just accused and never charged or convicted, we lumped the rape accusation in with stole some crab legs and said something vulgar on a table.
Yes.
No. Who cares about all the other stuff? There's one thing that mattered. He was accused of rape. And then in 2016, when this is alleged to have happened, he's in an Uber with a guy, Ronald Darby, and an unnamed associate. Well, we found out this week in the unnamed associate is a guy named Brandon Banks, who, when this allegedly happened, Brandon Banks was awaiting trial for rape. Brandon Banks is now unable to be interviewed by the NFL because he's in prison for rape. I don't know what Jameis Winston did at Florida State. I know this, that if I've been accused of a crime and I was very adamant that I was innocent of that crime, I would do my best not to hang out with people who had then just been accused of the exact same crime. And I'm very open-minded when people get accused of something. If you get accused of a crime, you'd want me on your jury. My burden of proof or reasonable doubt is high. But when you get accused of a similar thing 2 times, I get very concerned. And I think anyone can be unjustly accused once. I think it's tough to convince me that 2 separate times unrelated people conspired to try to ruin your life. Because that's what an inaccurate accusation of this would be. So when you talk about Jameis' legacy in the NFL, if this is true, I'm not sure how much longer he needs to play in the NFL.
And a very good friend of mine I know is mentoring him in Derek Brooks. Now, you're not going to find a better mentor, Hall of Famer Derek Brooks, who played with Tampa Bay, has spent significant time with Jameis through the years. And all the reports that we were getting was, man, Jameis has made tremendous strides on and off the field. Now, with this and the whole investigation, now, it's alleged. He's not guilty, but it's alleged. But for him to put himself, being a franchise quarterback, so for me, if I own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have to ask myself today, is Jameis Winston the quarterback of my future? Because the same question I asked myself when he was in college, would he ever sit before the commissioner? You think that's still not on the board? And he's already been suspended once. So now what is the next suspension? So that part right there concerns me moving forward.
Number 1 overall pick in 2015, to your point, he has steadily progressed depending on how much or how long he gets suspended. How does this impact we'll get to the Buccaneers and their season, but just him in general, the decisions that they make for what they want to do with him.
Listen, my morality does not need to be everyone else's. I can only speak to my own. And I can get past a lot of things. If a player's talented enough, and he's a kleptomaniac, man, you're going to listen. Once every couple months, the guy's going to be picked up for stealing from Best Buy. All right, I'm going to deal with it. A guy that goes out and drinks too much and gets in bar fights, I can deal with it. Like, I'm much more lenient than my partner Cris is on a lot of this stuff. This is what, man, if you're the Bucs, and at the end of this investigation, you credibly believe he did this, I don't know why you'd want him on your football team. What he's accused of doing is awful. And you don't need to have a wife or a sister or a mother or a daughter to know it's awful. He's got to be a person to know it's awful. And I know what he was accused of at Florida State was horrific. I don't know that he did it. But I know a lot of people that go through their whole life with never being accused of any of this once. I don't know many people that go through their whole life of being unjustly accused of something like this twice. And that's, so for me, like, what's his future? If he did it, I don't think he should have much of a future. In this league,
it's hard to commit the type of dollars that they would have to commit to him within the next year to year and a half. To me, that I couldn't justify that decision because I don't know where Jameis is mentally. I don't know what he's going to do, not only when he's on the field, but when he's off the field. And is he that kind of football player that I'm willing to walk this out with him the rest of the way and take that type of chance? And I'm just not that type of person.
What about for Tampa Bay? I mean, they open up at New Orleans. They've got Philadelphia. They've got Pittsburgh. How does this impact just how they start the season and what it may
Well, it impacts how they
the
start. If
year.
you look at the number of quarterbacks and good teams that we have in the NFC, forget about their division. Oh, Drew Brees. Oh, Cam Newton. They got their work, man. They got their work cut out for them. But I believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick, in a situation like this is where he thrives. If you make him the starter for the whole season, he's very, very average to pathetic. But you put him in a short stint, and you have all the OTAs in the summer camp to prepare him for that 3 games. So if they can come out of that, because they got high hopes in Tampa Bay this year, if they can come out of the 3-game suspension 2-1, it would be a huge win for the Buccaneers.
Well, and listen, if you are someone that likes to look at last year's schedule, last year's record to see how tough this year's schedule is, it's the toughest opening 3 games any team in the league has had in at least a decade. So, like, they are playing 3 consecutive double-digit win teams. I mean, you mentioned them. Pittsburgh, they're 3 of the best teams in the league from last year. So it's a tough stretch. You're right about Fitzpatrick, though. And this would be the 11th straight year Fitzpatrick started at least 3 games. Right? 3 to 6 games. That's right. That's his absolute perfect zone for him. So I think they could be okay. The bigger story, obviously, is what's happening with Jameis.
Yeah, all right. We'll continue to track that. And we've got more First Things First coming up after this. Catch baseball's biggest stars for an unforgettable show from the nation's capital, the MLB All-Star Game, July 17th, only on Fox, or you can stream it live on Fox Sports Go.
Check us out, Sarah. We're there.
Oh,
We're
you
there,
are?
broadcasting live Monday and Tuesday.
Yes.
DC is going down.
I like it. Back here on First Things First, and we're going viral. Alexi Lalas, who's going to join us on the show later, got fired up over this Brazil star Neymar being roughed up, including 10 fouls against him in the game against Switzerland alone. That's the most fouls against a single player in the World Cup in the last 20 years. And, of course, we can always count on the internet to add to the jokes. Check this out. Twitter user Jean-Pierre with the Neymar parody.
Oh,
I thought
this
that was,
one here is great.
I thought that was Chris Tucker.
Wait for it. Hold on. Wait for it. Go eat that. Oh, you thought it was Chris Tucker?
Yeah.
This, by the way, while the field is not nearly as nice, is a close proximity or close facsimile to what Switzerland did to Neymar. That was ridiculous in the opening game of the World Cup.
Well, it's called the scouting report, Nick. You come into the World Cup banged up. You know, look at him with the pretty hair. He's a small guy. He's a pretty boy. You got to be able to rough him up. You got to be able to take the fight to him. And also, from a tactical standpoint, you can't give Neymar any type of space. So you have to crowd him on the field. We just had to get a little physical with him.
You cannot take your football philosophy hit them where they've been to soccer.
It was very effective. He was complaining the whole game.
It was effective. It was against the rules. It was unsporting.
There's not a sport that I've been involved in that you couldn't be physical.
I just love the parody. I'd like to know how long that took. Time for some stories to start your morning. Let's start with the NBA. The Dallas Mavericks traded for Luka Doncic on draft night. Doncic was the MVP of the EuroLeague last season. Nick, do you like the selection the Mavs made?
Hell yes, I like the selection the Mavs made. I believe this is who they would have taken if they'd won the lottery. If they'd gotten the #1 overall pick, they'd have taken Luka Doncic. This is a 19-year-old who was the best player in the second-best league in the world. Like, I think he's the best player in this draft. I think they got a steal being able to get him with the 5th overall pick, essentially, plus their pick next year. I love this for Dallas. I don't know what Atlanta's doing.
And, Nick, you love the fact that certain franchises do better with European players. In Dallas, look at Dirk Nowitzki and some of the other players. Besides San Antonio, who would you say that's done better with the talent of developing these players into spectacular players? Great job by Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, Rick Carlisle's going to have some fun with him. Okay, moving on, the guy he was traded for, Trae Young, who'll be heading to Atlanta. Young led the NCAA in points and assists last season. CeCe, do you think Young will be a successful NBA player?
I don't think so. I think it's marginalized because his inability to be able to finish at the rim. You know, we've seen three-point shooters come out of college, prolific scorers come to the NBA, and people play up on them. People defensively, you know that they're going to struggle. Now, I do think it's better for him going to the Eastern Conference compared to the Western Conference, where they are more top-heavy on the point guards.
Here's the thing. I think we started talking about Trae Young so early in the season, and then you saw some flaws in his game. I think we've gone too far in the other direction. This guy, from an offensive standpoint, had the best freshman year of any player in college basketball since Kevin Durant. I wouldn't have traded Doncic for him, but I like Trae Young. I think he'll take a couple years. I think the Hawks are a good place for him. I think he will be a good NBA player.
And to the NFL, Drew Brees is less than 1,500 yards away from Peyton Manning's record for career passing yards. And Peyton says Brees deserves the all-time record. CeCe, what does the all-time passing record mean for Drew Brees' legacy?
If you look in the era for which he played in, with some of the greatest throwers that we have, and maybe the best thrower in Aaron Rodgers, and to say that he holds the passing record. Oh, not Tom Brady? With 8 Super Bowl appearances? Oh, not Peyton Manning? It's Drew Brees, the undersized kid from Purdue. Watch this pass right here. He has to jump to throw the ball down the middle, a 45-yard strike. With all the impressive, Brady, 6'5", Peyton Manning, 6'5 and a half, 6'6". Man, Drew Brees, very impressed. One of the greatest throwers we've ever had. First ballot Hall of Famer.
And he should get this record. Like, I know you're not big on the shoulds, but this is what Drew Brees' legacy is going to be. The guy, because he's not going to catch Brady in Super Bowls. He might not ever win another one. Like, they're a good team, but you have no idea. What Drew Brees, when I think of him in, he's a guy who's going to give you 300 yards passing basically every game he plays. How many 5,000 yards? He has more 5,000-yard seasons, I believe, than everyone else in NFL history combined.
Yes.
And so he should have this record. This will be in the first graph of his football resume.
Finally, the Cowboys have faced a tough offseason, cutting Des Bryant and losing Jason Witten to retirement. However, Dak Prescott still has high hopes for Dallas this season. Third-year quarterback said he is doing his absolute best to take the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. CeCe, what does Dak have to do next season for the Cowboys to be at their best?
He's got to get better, sir, when they take away his first option. When the defense flashes on him and they have a certain receiver that they expect to get the football, and he has to recollect and go to number 2 and number 3. Those are things that Dak has not been very, very good at. And then also when Ezekiel Elliott was out, and you say, Dallas, we can't run the ball. We need to rely on the passing attack. Can we throw the ball between 30 and 40 times and rely on our young quarterback? He wasn't very, very good at that. So in those situations, say Zeke's on the field and a team is doing a great job as far as stacking the box, taking them out of their run game, what does Dak do in those situations? And if I take away your primary, what are you going to do? What adjustments are you going to make in year number 3 of getting to your 3rd and 4th wide receiver?
I want to build on one thing you said. Also, as you get into year 3, he's not quite a veteran yet, but he's not a rookie anymore. how much does his ball do what you've talked a lot about, which is speak to his receivers? The Cowboys were bottom of the league in yards after catch last year. Now, part of that's because their wide receivers weren't very explosive, right? Part of that's on the receivers. But part of that's also when Dak is delivering the ball, is he delivering it in the right place, not just for the catch, but to be productive after the catch? If you have open space, is he leading you? Like, those are the smaller things that I think he can do. But bigger picture-wise, see, you got to do one of two things if you're going to be a top-flight quarterback in this league. You've got to either, and the best do both, take care of the football at a very high rate or create explosive plays. His rookie year, he did the former. He took care of the football at a historic rate. 4 interceptions all season. He wasn't fumbling the football. He wasn't great on the explosive plays. But it didn't matter because he wasn't creating any extra possessions for the other team. Last year, he did neither great. He turned the ball over, still didn't have the explosive play. So either he's got to get back to the ball security of his rookie year, or he's got to add the aspect of big plays his third year.
Yeah, one thing coaches talk about, Sarah, is when you're a quarterback, how many times does the opposition touch the football? That means batted passes or deflected passes by the defenders, because you know eventually those turn into turnovers. Tip passes turn into interceptions. Deflected passes, they stop you from converting third down and stop drives. So every time a defender touches the ball, and you see that with Dak an awful lot, how do you eliminate those touch balls? When you watch the video, watch how many times defenders, either at the line of scrimmage or down the field, that they actually get their hand on the football.
You mentioned Ezekiel Elliott will be back now this season with him, but does he, in terms of weapons, in terms of receivers, not having a true number one option, does he have enough weapons in the receiving corps?
No, not to be dynamic, not to match the type of running game that they have. They have, of their receiving corps, they have 1,000-yard season of all the wide receivers and tight ends. So, I mean, where do the explosive plays come from? Because, yes, you can be methodical in this NFL, but eventually you have to get big chunk yards. You have to get plays between 15 and more yards in the passing game. And how do they come up with those? Like, those are yet to be. They don't have a number one receiver. They have guys that are used to being number 2, number 3, and number 4 if I was being nice.
And listen, and because of that, you're not going to have as many enormous plays, right? Because you don't have a number one receiver, you're not going to have as many 35-yard plays on 1st and 10. The Cowboys are going to have long drives. They need to have long drives to be successful. Zeke's going to take care of your 3rd and less than 4. So where Dak needs to be near the top of the league, how good can he be the time Zeke gets stuffed on 2nd down and they're in 3rd and 9? Can he continue those drives, get you a new set of downs so Zeke can then take over again?
And every replacement, regardless of what they think, Sarah, you know this being an athlete, everyone thinks they're better than what they are. So, you know, man, if I'm not a shooting guard, man, I want to be able to shoot the ball. If I'm not a point guard, I want to be able to dribble. I can make plays. But as a wide receiver, we all think, if I'm a 4, I'm a 3. If I'm really a 3, I'm really a 2. And if I'm a number 2, I'm a number 1. Everyone's not a number 1 replacement like yourself. Jenna's out, Sarah's in, a number 1 replacement. Dallas does not have that.
Well, we're going to talk about the number 1 guy back at the NBA. And while the 2 favorites to sign LeBron James seem to be Cleveland or LA, Philadelphia is attempting to enter the LeBron James sweepstakes. The 76ers reportedly doing everything they can to clear cap space for James to sign there. LeBron has until Friday to sign or decline his player option for next year. Nick, is there a chance that LeBron actually stays in Cleveland?
So I'm going to say something that might surprise some of the viewers if you watch the show regularly, because for months now I've been saying LeBron's gone. Like, this was your chance.
Yes.
Going into the year, I said the only way he stays is if they win the title. 2 months ago, I said, even if they win the title, LeBron's gone. I didn't do much work in our week off. The little bit I did was trying to talk to some people about this, because I know this is the big sports story of the next month. And I was told, do not slam the door shut on LeBron staying in Cleveland. I wasn't told it's likely. I wasn't told they're the favorite. But I was told
they're back in the picture.
And you shouldn't go on TV and say it's 0%. Is exactly what I was told. So don't call it 0%. Because the point you've been making, C, and I'll let you elaborate on it, the family thing is real. And the point the general public's been making, which is there a perfect fit? Is there a fit that you're like, oh, bingo, that's it?
Right.
That doesn't seem to be there. And so Could he stay in Cleveland? Yes. Would he sign a long-term deal in Cleveland? I do not believe that is possible. I think if he does, we're doing all this again in a year. But I now, for the first time in months, think it's a real possibility that he does stay.
And we just miss on the fact that because he's from Ohio, you know, we got Kawhi, he's from California. We got Paul George, he's from California. And these guys trying to get back to California. That's what LeBron did his second decision. He left Miami. He left the glitz and the glamour, a couple NBA championships to say, look at his letter. I'm going back home because Northeast Ohio means that much. Now, Urban Meyer and I talk about this all the time. We talk to recruits and everything. We talk about, you're going to make a 4-year decision or you're going to make a 40-year decision? Because I'm approaching, that's how long I've been gone from Ohio and Ohio State. But, Nick, you've been there with me. It's like yesterday. And the way they treat their athletes. LeBron, we see him at Ohio State football games. He's always said, if I went to college, I would go to Ohio State. I would have went to Ohio State because the pool from Ohio. Him and his wife are from Ohio. All right? His business partner, Mavericks.
From Ohio.
He's from Ohio.
Rich Paul.
And this is all that they know. They can get to L.A. at some other point in their life or in the offseason. And I just believe the decision is not only LeBron in basketball, his wife has a lot to do with the decision and those boys who want to play basketball. And you typically who they want to play basketball with? With people they know.
Well, and you can expand on that. And, Cece, I know you've brought this up. His sons are now at a different age. Back when he was making his decision to go
they weren't a part of the decision.
They didn't have a speaking role, as you would put it.
And
now they do.
Bronny.
Particularly Bronny. And I know we try to be careful on the show and talk about the kid too much because he's 13 years old. Don't want to put added pressure on him. But this kid is beginning to build a profile of his own amongst the recruitment circuit, right? Amongst college basketball, the people that rate young people. And he's doing it with his Ohio team, you know what I mean, with his summer league team. And so, like, that matters at least to a degree. I can't, though, have this discussion without going back a year ago this time, or 11 months ago, and the Kyrie trade. And I say that because of this. What are we now hearing about Paul George? Paul George might stay in Oklahoma City. And Paul George, you can be a free agent, go to L.A., might stay in Oklahoma City. If you remember, the Cavs could have had Paul George. The Cavs, LeBron didn't want them to trade Kyrie, but whatever, they chose to trade Kyrie. They decided they didn't want Paul George because they didn't want a rental. They wasn't going to be able to keep him. They wanted that super valuable Brooklyn pick that became the 8th pick, and Colin Sexton might end up being good. And
actually, what the Cavs offered the Pacers was better than what the Pacers accepted in the trade for Paul George.
What they were initially discussing with him, but then Dan Gilbert wanted that pick. They wanted a post-LeBron future. If LeBron is considering, and I can tell you he is at least considering staying in Cleveland now with this team, what would it be like if Paul George was on the team? If Paul George is considering staying with Ross, he'd be saying,
they would be talking about adding a third piece.
Well, so with that being said, there's a reason you have said 0%. We saw throughout the course of the season, we saw in the postseason a frustration of LeBron. So you can't change the past. What can the Cavs do now to potentially try and persuade him if he were?
Well, I believe that the hold of Ohio is real to LeBron and his camp, but also the fact, how do they get better? Can they go out and get Kimba? Can they get him from Charlotte? That wouldn't, because they got to get better at the guard position. You cannot go back into the 2018-19 season with George Hill and J.R. Smith.
And Jordan Clarkson.
I mean, like, you cannot. I was going to get to him later.
Sorry.
But, I mean, you just cannot do it. Your backcourt's got to get stronger, and you think you've done that through the draft, but they still need to make an additional move.
And this is just, and they obviously don't have the cap space to make the move. They have two valuable assets outside of LeBron. One is Colin Sexton, but that was more valuable as the 8th pick than as Colin Sexton. Because the 8th pick, when you trade him, it's whomever they want. Now it's a human being. You have to like that player. You have to need a point guard. And the other potential asset's Kevin Love. Kevin Love's only valuable on a very specific set of teams. You can't be trying to beat the Warriors. You have to basically be out east. You've got to be a team that, you know, who looks at Kevin Love and says, I guess maybe the Suns. Like, could the Suns say, all right, we're not trying to compete for a championship, but we don't have our pick next year. Like, we just want to eke into the playoffs as the 8th seed. Like, so they don't have a lot of great ways to improve that basketball team. Kimball Walker, though, if the Hornets want Sexton for Walker and filler, that makes it a little more attractive for LeBron, I'm sure.
It'll be interesting to see. All right, coming up, can Eli Manning lead the Giants to a bounce-back season? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini.
Coach, how are you?
Good to be back. Good to be here.
Have you been on vacation or no? Just these two?
A little bit. In Cape Cod, we spent some time there. So, yeah.
Oh.
You can tell when my
Scooning.
golden bronze tan.
I've learned not to talk about anyone's bronze.
Yeah.
Let's discuss the New York Giants. We're going to get to some stuff that we do know. Despite a disappointing 2017 season, Eli Manning has high hopes for 2018. He, of course, will get his best receiver back in Odell Beckham this season, along with number 2 overall pick Saquon Barkley. He believes the Giants' offense will lead them to a bounce-back year.
It's been an unbelievable run. But I want to continue doing it. It's not over. I know that, and I love playing quarterback. I love everything that goes into it, and excited for this upcoming year, and to prove that hey, I can still play at a high level. We can win games. We can win championships, and it is about a game. It is about working to try to get better, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Coach, how much do the Giants need? He mentions winning championships. How much do the Giants need from Eli Manning this season?
Well, with the pieces that they've given him and the pieces that are coming back, getting Odell back and the threat that's going to create in the passing game, then you add Saquon Barkley and the issues he's going to create, this should open up a lot of things for Eli. And the addition of Nate Soldier and to handle that left tackle position, Will Hernandez, they've made some other improvements to the offensive line. They've put a lot of pieces in place to allow him to be successful. And I thought he took too much criticism for the failure they had last year. Thought he played better than people gave him credit for. And him saying that they can win championships, I don't think that's beyond the range of possibilities at all. I think they can be in the mix sooner rather than later if they keep making strides.
I'm with Coach. I'll throw out last season because they had a rash of injuries that we don't see teams recover from and the time for which they happen. Immediate, early in the season. So I look for them to have a bounce back year. I like the pieces that they put around Eli. Can the Giants win another championship? I think it's going to be hard for them with all the quarterbacks that we have, all the teams that they would have to go through. Now, I do believe that they can get to 9 wins and be a playoff team and go in the wild card route, which they have successfully done that in getting to the Super Bowl. But their defense is what we should be talking about. I know that we got the sexy conversation with Eli, offensive tackle. He got the draft pick, Hernandez. Yeah, okay, Odell Beckham. But that defense, can they play New York Giants? Because we have never seen the Giants win a Super Bowl without their defense being a dominant defense. So it's nice to talk about Eli. It's nice to talk about the new offensive coordinator, new head coach who's the offensive coordinator. Yes, but it really relies on that defense. They got a lot of players playing on that defense who make a lot of money, Sarah. Will they play up to the way they did in 2016? Where they would plan a championship for them if they are able to do that and create turnovers. Pressure on the quarterback and turnovers. I believe Eli and the rest of that offense and Giants team, yes, they can get back and make a march to a Super Bowl.
And with that defense, too, they've got to put Eli in a position to be successful. He can't be playing from behind every single game. That's not where they're going to be able to operate effectively. But if they can have a balanced attack through 4 quarters, to me, that's where Eli is most effective.
Let's assume just for the moment, for the sake of argument, the defense is good. Doesn't have to be as great as it was. I don't know if it's great, but very, very good in 2016.
Yeah,
but
they're a top 10 defense.
Top 10 defense. That's a perfect way to put it. Healthier. Landon Collins playing better. They don't have the mutiny that was going on in the defensive backfield.
Yes.
So let's just say the defense is good. Odell is there. Saquon is what we think Saquon's going to be, at least to that level. Eli is positioned well. Okay? The question I have about the Giants is about the quarterback. Because the question I have is, if I am listing just pros and cons for a team, which column at this point in his career is having Eli Manning as your quarterback? At this point in his career, it's not about the 2 Super Bowls, not about what he's accomplished. Right now, in that conference, is he an above-average quarterback? Is he better than 8 quarterbacks in the NFC? I tried to find him. I don't know if I can. So, like, right now, is Eli Manning, is he a force multiplier anymore? I say no. Is he good enough, if everything around him is perfect, to get you to a championship? Maybe. Like, and that's not an indictment on what he's accomplished, but it is a reality, I think, about who he might be at this point.
I don't think you're looking at the two teams he took to Super Bowl, because those weren't great, dominant teams. The first Super Bowl they went on a run late in the season to barely get into the playoffs. And the way he played football was like any of the other top quarterbacks. When we've seen Eli, and he's had a competent team. So I believe Eli, like you, Coach, gets too much blame. And what happened last year was not Eli's fault. I believe that also Evan Ingram, the tight end, I believe he's going to be a superstar. I believe you like him, but in this day and age, in the NFL, where mismatches and guys putting them in space, I believe he will be a tremendous asset. I believe all the pressure is not on Eli, and I believe he's more than competent. If they had drafted a quarterback, we wouldn't be saying, are they a Super Bowl contender? All right? We'll be talking about the rebuilding stage of the New York Football Giants. So I'm glad that they went back with Eli, went with Nate Solder on the left tackle, and decided to draft Barkley with the running back.
Coach, with CC saying, do you think the decision to draft Barkley was more about the confidence in Eli, in keeping him at quarterback, or what they believe Saquon Barkley will be?
Yeah, I think they went in, and the GM, the head coach, sat down and was able to sit back and really study him throughout the course of the season and realized they still had a very good quarterback. And I disagree, Nick. I don't think he's at the point where he's any sort of liability. I do think he's a force multiplier. I think that he is. I think he's a smart player. I don't think he gets enough credit for the success that they had. We talk about great quarterbacks all the time that haven't won a second Super Bowl. He did that, and he did that with teams that you wouldn't sit back and say, oh, my God, that was an incredible group of
We started
talent.
those seasons with the same type of questions that we start this season with, and they end up getting 2 Lombardi.
Listen, and which is why I tried to be very clear. I am not disparaging what the man's accomplished. But that last Super Bowl was 2011. We have 7 years since then. We have 1 year where he was the worst quarterback in football, the year before they got Odell. Period, point blank, the worst quarterback in football. I mean,
we can go through those quarterbacks.
We can go the worst starting quarterback, not backup that got pressed into duty. He had a 69 passer rating. He threw 27 picks to 18 touchdowns. That was for a season. They got Odell. He got a little bit better. But we are now, I don't think, you know who also won 2 Super Bowls? And it was all great? His brother. His brother right now would not be a force multiplier. His brother right now, like, Eli, to me, is closer to the end than the beginning. I think we all know that. And closer to a guy that is, at this point in his career, a caretaker quarterback than he was the guy in 2011. 2011 was his athletic prime.
This is the thing. Eli's athletic, it will never change. His body, his arm talent, it has not changed since his rookie year. He does not have the type of physical skills that deteriorate. He's not running with the football, and Eli has plenty enough arm strength. I worked out with Peyton and Eli on the same field, and Eli has a much stronger arm than Peyton would ever have. But, man, you need help around you. If you can't see, if you don't have any pass protection, you got an incompetent defense and all the other things. You also got the kid with blonde hair out there acting a fool every once in a while. So Eli has overcome tremendous distractions to be able to win those 2 Super Bowls.
And looking at his athletic ability is kind of looking at Tom Brady's athletic ability.
I don't think I said his athletic ability. I said his prime. I meant prime for an athlete. His prime for an athlete.
What about, look at our quarterbacks now. Look at Phillip Rivers. Look at Tom Brady. Look at Drew Brees. All these guys. Eli hadn't been hurt, just like them.
I also think those guys have always been better passers than Eli.
And don't you think prime is being redefined by guys like Tom Brady?
Absolutely.
There's a new prime here, and the experience that you have, the ability to control the offense, the ability to understand what you're getting
with
defensively.
The quick passing game.
Yeah, those things are underrated. You see a ton of talented, athletic, gifted players who can never play quarterback at a high level because they can't figure out what's happening in front of them. He can, and he can do it really well.
Okay.
Coach, we're bringing you back later.
Good.
We want to hear more.
No,
coming up.
I think
what
you guys are going to be holding that. No,
Kawhi Leonard, that's next.
Listen,
Welcome back to First Things First. Cris Broussard now joins the show. Cris, thanks for being here with us.
Always, I know. I feel like I've been in L.A. too long.
Oh, it's nonstop. You buckled in, ready for all this? Free agency?
Good to see you.
All right, let's talk about Kawhi Leonard, who has expressed his desire not to remain in San Antonio. According to reports, the Spurs will either keep Kawhi or deal him to a team in the Eastern Conference. This would go against Leonard's wishes, as he reportedly wants to play in Los Angeles. Cris, should the Spurs actually ignore all trade offers from Western Conference teams?
I think for now they should. I think, their tact is they want to try to mend fences. They don't have to be in a rush. I mean, technically, you've really got until February to pull the trigger on a trade. I don't know if you want to wait that long.
At the trade deadline.
Yeah, at the deadline. Mm-hmm. But right now, why rush into a deal with a Western Conference team or any team? Try to mend the fences. Now, I'm told that's going to be virtually impossible to do. Mm-hmm. Kawhi is ready to move on. The problem's not so much Greg Popovich. He still has great respect for Pop. But the front office, the way they handled him, the misdiagnosis. But beyond that, he felt like we were all on board together. You guys were in agreement with me going to New York. You sent your trainers out there to work out with me. And when the press, the media, went off on Kawhi because he wasn't on the bench during the playoffs, the Spurs never stepped up to say, hey, we knew he was going to New York. We're all on the same page. He felt like they left him to hang out to dry. And so he's L.A. or bust. Not so much Lakers or bust. They're the first choice, but he's L.A. or bust. So I think, though, right now, try to mend the fences. If that doesn't work, then see what the Eastern Conference team will offer.
Are you concerned, though? Because Kawhi is a little bit different.
Yeah.
As far as, what he really wants. A lot of people don't know. They don't know Kawhi. There's not a lot of people that are really, really close to him. Do you think Kawhi can be talked back in to San Antonio?
From what I'm being told, no.
Okay.
I'd say no.
Which is amazing.
But I would try if I'm them. Right?
But it speaks to what has happened in that relationship, because that is a $70+ million decision. So the Spurs can offer him so much more money than everybody else, and they will. Like they will eat that and give him the supermax. 5 years, $219 million. And that's a deal that if he doesn't take it this offseason, if he doesn't, let's say he just plays out the deal, right?
Spurs.
He has to re-qualify for it.
Yep.
He's no longer eligible for it after this offseason.
Yeah, so there's a formula. There's certain things he has to accomplish.
All-NBA or MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, something like that. Here's the thing: if you're San Antonio and you can't mend it, and you do realize you are going to trade him, I do not care what conference I trade him to. Kawhi Leonard will be, if he's traded, the best player traded since Shaquille O'Neal was traded to the Miami Heat. Period, point blank. Kawhi Leonard is better than Dwight. He's better than. I'm not counting LeBron going to Miami, which was a free agency thing. The best player traded in this league in almost 15 years. If Kawhi Leonard is traded, if you are the person giving that player up, you have to simply take the best available offer. You cannot say, well, it's not as good of an offer as LA, but at least he goes out east. If you are the team giving up the best player traded in 15 years in this league, you have to trade him to whomever's giving you the best return.
I do agree, and I think at the end of the day, you get to that point. Because I've talked to GMs who are insistent you don't trade them to your conference. However, at the end of the day, you do what makes your team best. But right now, I wouldn't go there. Right now, see if an Eastern team will offer more in hopes of winning the title, Boston or Philly, and then convincing him to stay. Cleveland, I heard you guys talking earlier. If LeBron decides to stay for 1 year, because he doesn't have to become a free agent, right? Stay for 1 year. If I'm Cleveland, I'm going for Kawhi. And that, I don't know that San Antonio wants Kevin Love because they got LaMarcus Aldridge, but I'd offer Kevin Love, Colin Sexton, and maybe you can do a three-way where a team that does want Kevin Love, so you get Kawhi and LeBron for 1 year and you go for it. You know both of them will probably leave, maybe even go to L.A. together in 2019. But those are options out there. And then if I can't get something I like, look, I'll take Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, and maybe if you want Lonzo Ball.
But you do that on the back end.
Exactly. I'd explore everything else first.
Well, who has the leverage then? I mean, you are talking about an elite play. Nick laid out the elite type of player Kawhi is, but the Spurs are in no rush. If you're an Eastern Conference team, if you're Philadelphia, if you're Boston, do you believe you can convince him to stay if you get him there for a year, or is there taking that risk because you know at the end of 1 year he can
I
be gone?
wouldn't do it if I was Philadelphia because I don't think he's going to stay. Now, if he wins a championship, that's hard to walk away from. But I think at wherever he is traded, if he's traded to the East, I think his plan will be when I'm a free agent in 2019, I'm walking. Now, here's the Spurs' one leverage is this. Let's say they don't trade Kawhi and LeBron and Paul George go to the Lakers. The Lakers' cap room is used up. Now, the Clippers would have cap room next summer. They'll have plenty, so they'll be a player. But you could at least eliminate the Lakers from the scenario if you wait it out.
Listen, but the other problem with Kawhi making it so clear he only wants to go to L.A., and then the Spurs reportedly saying we only want to trade him to the East, is the teams in the East are going to give you a worse package.
Yes.
Because they don't think he's going to stay. Like, if you thought you were trading for Kawhi Leonard, and when you traded for him, he was signing an extension, what does Boston not put on the table other than Jason Tatum? Nothing. What does Philly not put on the table other than Simmons and Embiid? Nothing. Like, if you think we're getting
But they would know that you're saying so the Spurs shouldn't have came out and said we're only dealing with the East.
No. What I'm saying is Kawhi making it clear he wants L.A. weakens what teams from the East will offer, which further goes to the point that I'm trying to make, which is the Spurs cannot eliminate.
He doesn't care. Kawhi doesn't care about that.
No.
He's like, I don't care what they offer. I don't want to play there.
No. I don't agree with you as far as the trade with the East. Like Danny Ainge, just because San Antonio said we're only going to trade them to the East, that doesn't mean Danny Ainge and them are going to give them, we'll give them our second or third best offer. No. Because in that East, Philadelphia could be also getting better. So why wouldn't you still make your best offer if you're trying to land the prospect?
Okay,
I don't have that same thinking.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make this clear. I don't think the Spurs comments make the Celtics or Sixers give a worse offer. I think Kawhi's reportedly only going to sign an extension in L.A. That makes them give the worst offer, right? Because they don't think they're going to be able to keep him long term.